If you need additional help, take a peek at the examples 1 and 2 in the front of this lesson, 10.3. So I've decided to do 2 problems on page 542, which were assigned in homework for you, which will help you with the rest of your homework assignment. The first is number 19. The directions for 19 are solve each equation by taking the square root of each side. Now the directions kind of help us determine that this is already set up as a perfect square trinomial, but we can check ourselves with that. We know it's a perfect square trinomial if it's in the form a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. In this case, our a squared would be w squared, and our b squared would be 64. So if we take the square root of those 2 terms, square root of w squared is w, that's our a, and the square root of 64 is 8, that's our b. We multiply our a and b together and multiply that product by 2. So w times 8 times 2 is 16w, and it checks out. We get our middle term, 16w. So once we found that this is a perfect square trinomial, we know we can factor this as, I'm going to take this off of the subscript, factor this as a plus b all squared. Okay. Just fill in our a and b. In this case, our a is w, and our b is 8. Set that squared, and leave the rest of the equation as is. Okay, from here, we can take the square root of each side and solve. Well, this whole left-hand side of the equation is squared, w plus 8 all squared. When you take the square root of something squared, you're left with itself. So on the left, we just have w plus 8. We take the square root of 18, and we get plus or minus, I don't know a good way of writing that in this Word document, the square root, let me just insert the square root, bear with me, of 18. Now that plus and minus we put in there because the square root of 18 could be a positive number or a negative number. Whatever the value of the square root of 18 is, let's see, it would be somewhere between 4 and 5. If you take that number and make it negative, multiply it by itself, you'll get 18. And clearly if it's positive, multiply it by itself, you'll also get 18. That's why we include this plus minus sign. From here we just solve for w equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 18. And I'm going to leave that square root of 18 just as is in their original instructions. It tells you to round to the nearest tenth, but you don't need to do that for this homework assignment. Just leave the radical sign as is. There are 2 answers for w. W is equal to negative 8 plus the square root of 18. W is also equal to negative 8 minus the square root of 18. Okay, moving on from there, we'll quickly go through number 21 on page 542. The instructions say, find the value of c that makes each trinomial a perfect square. in order to make this a perfect square, we have to have a C value, which is equal to half of this first degree term coefficient squared. Okay, so we're looking at this 16 right here, this negative 16. So our C, we want to equal this first degree term coefficient of negative 16 divided by 2, and all of that, we'll put a parentheses to note all of that, squared. That's always the rule to make a trinomial a perfect square. We can go ahead and work that out. Negative 16 divided by 2 is like negative 8. Negative 8 squared is 64. So for number 21, the C value that we're going to add to make this a perfect square trinomial is simply 64. Hope this helped, and I will also post this Word document on RenWeb. Thank you.